Want to speak real English from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at EnglishClass101.com.
Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. Today I'm going to talk about the words must and must not and how we use them to talk about possibility. In this lesson I'm going to talk about a present possibility, so possibility now, and I'm going to talk about a possibility in the past too. So with this lesson I want to introduce a few common patterns and some example sentences to show you the meanings of must and must not for present and past, and also just to give you maybe some tools so that you can use these grammar points to talk about possibility in your life as well. So let's get started. Okay. First, I want to talk about present possibility, the present possibility. So these are things we want to talk about now, we think are possible now. The first group of examples, the first group of patterns I want to look at is must be plus a noun phrase, must be plus an adjective, or must be plus the verb in the ing form. These are a few examples of some patterns we can use with must to talk about possibility now, possibility in the present. A couple points though. We use must and must not as well to make guesses. We're making a guess about something we don't know, in other words. So there's some information we do not have. We are making a guess when we use must. The nuance of must is that there's a very high chance something is correct. So very high, meaning near 100%, a very high chance the guess is correct. Also, keep in mind that because this is a guess, because you are kind of giving an idea or giving a very strong opinion that something is probably correct, it's very strange to use must and must not, for that matter. It's very strange to use them in most cases to talk about yourself because we know ourselves and we know our group. So in a few exceptions, in a few special cases, we can use must and must not to talk about ourselves, but I'll talk about that later. Just keep in mind that in many cases it is strange to use must and must not to talk about yourself because you know yourself in most cases. So let's take a look at a few examples of how to use these. First, let's look at the first group, the first pattern here, must be plus a noun phrase. So if we use must be plus a noun phrase, it talks about an expression that has a high chance, something that has a high chance of being true, and it's related to a noun phrase. So for example, the expression, this must be the right house, meaning there's a very, very high, near 100% chance that this house is the correct house. In other words, this is the house I'm looking for. There's a very high chance of that. One more example, she must be a student. Here I've used student as my noun phrase. So in this situation, maybe I'm looking at a person and I guess based on her appearance, she must be a student. So there's a high possibility she's a student. These are a few examples of how to use must be with a noun phrase. Let's look at another pattern. The second pattern is must be plus an adjective. So just as we did with noun phrases, we use must be plus an adjective. So for example, you must be tired. Looking at another person, you can guess they must be tired. There's a very high chance that person is tired based on their appearance or some other hints you get from them. Tired is our adjective here. Another one, they must be angry. They must be angry. So again, looking at a group of people or a couple of people, based on the appearance, based on the situation, you guess there's probably a high chance those people are angry. They must be angry. All right, one more pattern. I talked about using must be plus a verb in the ing form. So here we see again must be, but in this case we have the ing form of a verb here. So in this example sentence, the computer must be thinking, must be thinking. Thinking is a word we use to talk about like functioning or moving or working, doing its job, in other words. But for computers, we like to sometimes say the computer is thinking, the computer is processing. Here, a computer maybe is taking a long time. The computer must be thinking. There's a high chance the computer is working, is thinking. One more. He must be working. He must be working. Maybe if you send your friend a message and there's not a response in a timely fashion, the response is very slow, you could say, to make a guess, oh, he must be working. That's why he hasn't responded. She must be working. There's a high chance that at this point in time, at this point now, that person is doing something, in this case, working. Okay, let's take a look now at the negative examples of this grammar point. So must not plus the same points we just talked about. Must not plus a noun phrase, must not plus an adjective, and must not plus a verb in the ing form. So we'll use exactly the same pattern, and we can even use, in many cases, similar noun phrases and similar adjectives. But it's important to remember must not expresses extremely low possibility. So extremely low possibility meaning very near to zero, if not impossible. So the nuance here is it's impossible, or there's like a 0.001% chance. Very, very low possibility. So please keep this in mind. Must be, or must, is used to make a high possibility guess. Must not, however, expresses very low possibility, very low. So let's look at a few examples, similar to the other examples we looked at. With a noun phrase, this must not be, again, must not be the right house. So it is impossible that this house is the correct house, in other words. Here, she must not be a student. Here, high chance she is a student. Here, low chance she is a student. Impossible she is a student. Next one, with adjectives here. He must not be busy in this case. He must not be busy is my adjective. Low chance he is busy. Very low chance he is busy. They must not be happy. They must not be happy is a very low chance that they are happy. So again, these are all guesses based on some outside information, like a visual or some other hints you have. You're making a guess. In this case, a very low chance of something. To move on to the final pattern, she must not be studying. So at this point in time, there's a very low chance she is studying. Very low chance. She must not be studying. One more. They must not be traveling here. So again, low chance that these people in the sentence are traveling. So please just keep in mind, positive statements express high possibility. Negative statements express low possibility or near impossibility. Okay, now let's take a look. Let's move from present possibility to past possibility. This gets a little bit more complicated or a little bit more challenging maybe, but we can keep many of the same patterns really. When we want to talk about past possibility, we need to use a pattern like must have been. So you can see in present possibility, we use must be. In past possibility, for a positive sentence anyway, we use must have been. Must have been. This is a grammar change, so please be careful. But we can use noun phrases, adjectives, and the same verb in the ing form, just as we did with present possibility. This is true for positive statements here and for negative statements. Again, we update negative statements with must not have been in the past. So let's take a look. Again, we're looking at very high chances with the positive. However, they're in the past. These are very high chance situations, very high chance guesses in the past in this case. And as we talked about in the present possibility section, with not, must not have been, this expresses impossibility in the past. Impossibility, very, very low chance. So let's look at a few examples here too. For positive statements, that must have been the right house in the past. That must have been the right house. For example, you drive past the correct place, you can remark, oh, that must have been the right house. Another one, he must have been the waiter. He must have been the waiter. Maybe I made a mistake. Oh, he must have been the waiter, for example. With an adjective, the computer must have been broken. The computer must have been broken. That's why it wasn't working, for example. Or you must have been tired. You must have been tired after your trip, for example. So again, making a very high level possibility guess in the past. Here, with the verb form in the ing, she must have been studying. She must have been studying, for example, last night or this morning. He must have been working as well. So you can see I've just updated some of these to show how we change the sentence from the past to the present and vice versa. Let's look at some negative examples. That must not have been the office. That must not have been the office. So in other words, there was a mistake, a low chance that that building was the office. Another example, you must not have heard the news. You must not have heard the news. There's a very low chance you heard the news. So here, must not expresses that very low chance. Okay, just a couple more patterns I want to talk about. Over here, I have must have plus a verb and must not have plus a verb. So these are a couple of different patterns we can use in the past, but we use a verb with them. Instead of using a noun phrase, an adjective, and so on, as we've talked about here, we use just a regular verb in the past tense here. But again, in the positive form expresses a high chance of something, high level possibility of something, low chance for the negative form as well, so impossibility. So let's take a look then at how we use a verb after must and must have in the past. So we must have made a mistake. This is one of those cases where using we or using yourself as the subject of a sentence is actually okay, because you're talking about yourself in the past and something that is different between now and the past. So in this case, you learn some new information and you make a guess about your past self. In this case, I made a mistake, but in the past, given new information, you can guess, oh, we must have made a mistake. I must have made a mistake. I didn't know it at the time. In this case, we use he must have made a mistake. So here's the past participle form of the verb, must have made a mistake. Or they must have gone to somewhere else. Or they must have whatever. We can use the past participle form of the verb here to show a past activity, a past possibility situation. Let's look at one more example then. So my package must have shipped. My package must have shipped. So in this case, the package, there's a high possibility. My package was sent from a warehouse, for example, or from a company. So there's a high level of possibility here. My package must have shipped, that past participle form of the verb. Okay, let's look, however, at the negative form. The negative form. He must not have come to work is my first example. He must not have come to work. A very low chance. Impossible. He came to work. So there's a very, very low chance this person came to work. He must not have come. He must not have come. Again, this past participle form of the verb here. Finally, she must not have forgotten. She must not have forgotten. You could say she must not have forgotten the report. She must not have forgotten her keys. Or just she must not have forgotten some other information. So again, past participle form of the verb is used here. She must not have forgotten blah, blah, blah. We can add some extra information about what she must not have forgotten. So low possibility, she forgot. Extremely low. So please keep in mind that when we use the positive form, it expresses near 100% possibility, and with the negative form, near 0% possibility, near impossible. So in this lesson, I've introduced present possibility example sentences and past possibility example sentences. You'll notice here I haven't introduced any future tense possibility. That's because in most cases, we do not use must to talk about future possibility. In those cases, we use words like probably, like I'm probably going to, or I'll probably, blah, blah, blah. So we don't generally use must to talk about the future possibility. There are a few cases where we may use the word must, but maybe I can talk about that in a different video. For now, I'd like to just focus on present and past possibility with a few examples here. So I hope this lesson was useful for you. If you have any questions or if you want to try to make a sentence, please feel free to do so in the comments. So if you liked this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe to our channel too if you haven't already. Check us out at EnglishClass101.com for more good stuff as well. Thanks very much for watching this episode, and I will see you again soon. Bye!